I believe everyone is joining us now, so welcome to this BAFTA event for The Falling. We will be taking questions, so if you do have one, there is a button directly below this screen, a Q&A button, and you can send your questions via that. Viggo Mortensen's feature directorial debut, which he also wrote, produced, composed the score for, and stars in, is a powerful portrait of family life. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Viggo Mortensen, Lance Henriksen, director of photography Marcel Zyskind, and also producer Chris Curling. Hello all.
Hello.
Hi.
And we may at some point in time be joined by Laura Linney during the conversation. We keep your fingers crossed. Viggo, I'll start with you. The film draws on elements from your own life. Could you talk a little bit about how you developed the story?
Well, it wasn't the first script I'd written. In fact, when I started writing Falling, I was trying to make another movie, which maybe I'll someday make. I was part way through raising financing, and it was something I started writing right after my mother's funeral. She had had dementia, like Lance Henriksen's character Willis does in the story. And I was just trying to remember things about her, about my childhood, adolescence, also about her struggle with dementia and how that affected not only her, but her relations with us, my two brothers, Charles and Walter, who I dedicate the movie to, and other people. My father was in the beginning stages of dementia at that point, and he lasted 2 years before he passed away. And that's the period when I was rewriting and trying to raise financing and losing the financing, and very much independent filmmaking. A couple tries, and then the third time it worked. And really, Marcel and I just made a decision to start making a movie, even though we didn't have the financing. Marcel came with the camera, or one like the one we were going to use, we intended to do, and some good lenses, and we went and decided to find the farm. We knew we wanted to have a catalog of images from different seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and so it was a dual purpose. It was find the locations, film them in different seasons, a couple different trips, and get to know each other. Even though I had worked under Marcel. He was director of photography on Two Faces of January, Hossein Amini's debut film, and we'd known each other since, I guess, 2006, when I met Marcel while I was shooting Eastern Promises. So we just started filming and collecting these images and getting a feel for what we wanted to attempt. And that's how it came about. Fortunately, it did become contagious enough that we were able to raise the financing and put together a British-Canadian co-production with Chris Curling representing Great Britain and Dan Beckerman, Canada, as the trio of producers, and me being the other one, the producer of origin, I guess.
And I'll come to Chris and Marcel in a moment about their reaction on reading the script, but Lance first. What was your reaction when you received the script and read through it the first time?
I hate to keep saying this, but I was terrified. I really was. I mean, it was a very detailed journey, and I at first, I kept rereading it, and then I get a rewrite and a rewrite. I mean, we had time because we were, the trigger hadn't been pulled yet, and it was, and I started connecting with, my family and what I went through of being a child in a family, and then, holding my parents' feet to the fire about what they were like. So it all started rolling back, coming back, and with that, my fear of doing it was gone. I mean, I knew it was going to be a challenge. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a challenge, but it was a worthy challenge. I knew that too. I mean, it was a beautifully written script. And so, that was the beginning. And Viggo kept coming and visiting me at my place. And then when it started coming together, when it did, we were on the plane for Toronto pretty quick once the trigger got pulled. Yeah, so it happened so fast. It wasn't a terrible long shoot. It was like we were absolutely living it. It was so dense and demanding.
I was going to say that's one of the extraordinary things about your performance as Willis is it feels like a role that you would have to completely immerse yourself in.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and that was the demand. I mean, it was there, you know, and not almost like walking through a maze at times, because I didn't want to presuppose stuff. I wanted to take it as it comes and see where it went. And Viggo was so supportive of that. I mean, I don't know that anybody else, I mean, I think could tell this story this way. No, I don't believe that for a minute. You know, it's pure, it's fairly pure. That's what I think.
And Chris, your what was it like when you received the script and then read it for the first time?
Well, as a producer, the two most important elements are always the director and the screenplay. So when somebody called me and said that Viggo was looking for a producer based in London, the script came a few minutes later. I printed it out. I stopped what I was doing and read it. I had a pretty up and down relationship with my own father, who was very conservative. And so I immediately related to it. I was very moved by it. And who wouldn't be excited to get the chance to work with Viggo on his first film as a director? So it was a very, I immediately responded that I was very, very interested, and spoke to Viggo, spoke to Dan Beckerman, and just got working.
And Marcel, from your perspective, as Viggo just mentioned, I know I've spoken to other directors who don't necessarily have a very long relationship with one specific cinematographer. It's quite rare that the cinematographer comes on so early in a project. So could you talk about how this project developed for you?
Well, as both Lance and Chris said, well, it's a beautiful script, and who wouldn't want to have the chance to work with Viggo? I concurred with that as well. But I was very lucky to have known Viggo for many years already, and the script he had written before, he mentioned in the beginning, he had also shown to me, and that to me was also very interesting. And I said, Viggo, I'm on board, whatever happens. So. Being the gentleman that he is, so I was. We were waiting for the other one that didn't happen. Then Viggo showed me this script some time later, and I said, "Well, whenever you feel ready, and I'll be there." And as Viggo also said, at some point we just said, if we don't start, we might never start. So we just did it and went along.
And so this is to both you and Viggo. Just in terms of the film's look, over time, and I know you talked about specific images that you had, but what's interesting about this is that you do have a film that spans both seasons and time, which can be quite a challenge. And just for all the seasons, did you have specific references that you wanted for both the LA look and for the rural look?
If I could say, I mean,
Yeah,
the rural look and LA, they come by themselves in a way, because they're just so different in a way, and obviously they were almost shot not that far apart in terms of time in the film. I mean, the flashback scenes obviously go back to different seasons, but the looks of the places, they are so fundamentally different that they are, they're changed by the way they just are. But obviously the seasons, we wanted to achieve a span of time for the flashbacks, which meant that we'd have to film, if we could, in various seasons. But knowing that we weren't able to achieve a huge budget like so many other films that span so many decades and seasons, we'd have to take our own chance and just as Viggo said as well, that we spent our location recce's research also. That time we spent filming as well, landscapes and yeah.
And Marcel also, I mean, the way he lit, you know, interior scenes in the flashbacks, he was complementing what some of the material we had. You know, obviously it's not a question of, we decided very early on we didn't want to, you know, have the past be in black and white or different looking film stock, or, you know, or artificially, you know, making some kind of grain or sepia or anything. We just wanted to follow, in the same sense that the difference between LA and Canada, you know, or the Northeast, you know, the light dictates, I mean, what it's going to be. It's not like you're creating that, but Marcel did create a complementary light, a warmer kind of light, a more summer or early autumn, depending on the scene, for the flashbacks and the interiors, even though we were shooting in the dead of winter in Canada. So those were married with some of the memory shots that we had actually done in summer or early autumn, you know. And that was, you know, he did a great job with that.
Thank you. But it's also, in a way, it's like kind of, when you think back, I suppose, even somehow, I don't know whether it's just by saying that, you know, the good old times were better. Maybe they weren't, but they were just, you know, in a way that you wanted to have a slightly more of a warm feeling as of a family. And so the scenes, the flashbacks in the youth of Viggo's character John, we were intending them to be warmer, and obviously the present in the farm was more bleak as time has passed on.
And that was complemented too. I mean, we worked in, one thing I learned from really good directors is you can't prepare too much or too early. And we talked a lot, you know, with Carol Spear, the production designer, who I'd worked on all three movies that I did with David Cronenberg. She's wonderful. And she, in fact, it was a team. It was Marcel, Carol, and myself doing these scouts and doing these shoots. She was there for what we were shooting. And she had the first look at the place. You know, when we found the farm, we didn't have the time or budget to actually do what you might do on a bigger budget, where it's just the inside of one farm or several insides of different farms and the outside of another barn. We had to find one farm, which took longer, but we did find it. And then Carol quickly started imagining, and we were talking. And so in conjunction with Carol Spear, the production designer, and also Ann Dixon, the costume designer, they also, with the colors they chose for costumes and interiors, that also added some warmth. It was just, we wanted it to be subtle, you know, same as with the camera, the lighting and stuff, but it was a really good team effort to create that without it being so noticeable. You know, you just feel it more. As more we were trying to get a feeling for a time when maybe it was better. The house was certainly cleaner when Willis had, when living there. You can see that the wallpaper, and that was amazing what Carol did. I have to say, there's one, I said, you know, we don't have time. We only have this week here. Can you possibly, if we go outside and do some filming, can you change the house from 1962, the interior, to Willis in 2009, where the wallpaper is torn and scuffed with his boots and yellowed with his cigarette smoke and just junk everywhere, and you know, just what you see. Can you do that today while we're shooting? Because we want to go inside tomorrow and shoot 2009. She said, well, normally it would take a few days, but I'll see what I can do. And whenever she says, I'll see what I can do, it means it's going to happen, because she's just amazing. I've never seen a production designer do so much with so little time and so little money.
Yeah, she had a great team as well. So
yeah, she did. The art department was amazing.
That's really disappointing, because Viggo, I thought that you, Marcel, and Lance went out on a really crazy wild night, came back and just tore the place apart.
That was a different day.
Lance did smoke it up a bit. Just
yeah, I did. I chain smoked it up.
It's interesting you mentioned this though about the past and the present, because I've had the pleasure of talking to you, Viggo, and Lance before, and the way that both of you discuss the shift between the past and present. Obviously, every kind of storytelling is subjective, and what struck me about the way the past is shot is it isn't the conventional flashback. It is a memory, and it's a memory by someone in the present, not remembering exactly how it was, but remembering it through the filter of the present. And that's one of the things I thought really incredible about the film, is that you get this sense that you are watching a series of memories that are sutured together.
Yeah, and that's tied in a way also to how we wanted to portray dementia. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of good movies. There's one or two this year. You know, portrayals of dementia are interesting ones. But I mean, I've had a lot of experience. Both my parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, stepfather. I mean, I've seen it up close, and I've even been there constantly in a caregiving role in some cases. And what's usually depicted is as someone who's confused, you know, when they have dementia or Alzheimer's. And if they show the point of view of that person, it's a confused point of view generally. And that's not my experience. For the most part, I would say it's the observers, even the caregivers, who are confused. The person who's seeing, feeling, hearing these things, you know, all the work we did, the tools you have at your disposal that you can use in infinite ways with filmmaking, image, sound, placement of that. Sometimes one thing by itself, sometimes only sound, sometimes only image. That married to the acting by Lance, the way he goes in and out of mental states, the way he listens, seems to understand something else than the others do. His present simply is that. He's not confused by it, he's there. He's only going to be confused if you correct him, you know? And so we were trying for that in a way. And so I'm glad it feels like more like memories than conventional flashbacks, because that's essentially what we were trying to do.
And this is something that you get in the scene on the plane. I watched the film again today, and I've already noticed previously something that happens in the bathroom I'll come to in a short while, but where Willis gets up and is walking around the plane, what struck me that I thought was quite incredible, Lance, is that I just felt, oh, you're actually at home. You're not seeing the place that we're seeing in front of us now. You're actually seeing the geography of your own home. How difficult was it to kind of to work your way into the mindset of Willis in that way?
You know, I have a good imagination to start with, I do. But the issues were not strange to me. I was literally calling Gwen to come down because I want to talk to her. Now, get down here, come on, you know, and I was more thinking about the relationship than I was where I was. You know, it didn't matter. It didn't matter where I was. I mean, it was, the point is, Gwen, I need to talk to you now. You know, so, and then he interrupts me and I'm going, oh, hey, stop pulling the rug out from under me. I'm thinking about something here.
Right.
Anyway, it's a beautiful journey. I mean, it was painful, but beautiful. I mean, and because I think the biggest thing in the world is that Willis did not want to be fixed. Don't fix me without my saying it's all right. You know, don't take my dignity away. I mean, you just, anyway.
And Viggo, from your perspective, filming a sequence like that, how quickly as a director, did you sort of know where the camera was going to be? Obviously, you have years of experience as an actor, so you know on the receiving end of it. But just that what's incredible about that scene is the way that you move from a wider establishing shot of the cabin of the plane into a more close-up on Willis's character and pulling out again. And throughout the film, was that something that you sort of storyboarded in detail or were working in the moment?
No, we didn't storyboard, but Marcel and I talked constantly, and Marcel had, you know, it was an extremely limited space, that plane, and as was the lavatory. I mean, we didn't have like flyaway walls and all this. We just had what we had, and we had just that night. Basically, we were shooting. It ended up being one of those days. I tried the first week. I was successful. I tried not to go over time ever, you know, whenever I could avoid it. But that was a particularly long night. It was a very difficult, cramped space to shoot in. But like most everything else, you know, we had talked about it beforehand, and Marcel had a very clear idea about what would be effective, and it was, you know, it was the way he shot it, and you know, the handheld stuff really was helpful and saved us time, but it was also effective as a look, as a feel for what Willis. You're getting to know him. You're just starting to realize, okay, that's your first realization. Okay, this guy is not perceiving things the way others are, and so forth. And we just used the time we had the best we could. It was difficult. We had, you know, the sequence for the lavatory we had to be very specific in what we wanted to achieve there. There wasn't much room. It wasn't like we had a million options either, I would say, Marcel, but we were, you were very clever in what you did. And we had worked it out, you know. It always helps when you do that. I mean, there wasn't a day that we didn't arrive on set with a pretty good idea what we wanted to do, open to maybe some things changing, or maybe we don't need that shot, or maybe we combine these two as you have to sometimes when you're running out of time.
Or you add an extra shot. Like the close-up of the book, which is actually the first shot of the scene, as I remember, in the plane, which was a shot we didn't think about, because often you start up, I think, well, I have to, how do you, you know, how do you show the scene best? And then you start, okay, we're a little wider. We see
it wasn't part of the scene even.
And then, we had a little time, and let's grab that, you said, as a very close thing on the book to his eyes and face, which was a beautiful shot. So
it was nice. And then after we'd got those shots, even when I was looking at dailies the next day, I thought, okay, that's probably a good place to start the scene. That might work, you know. But even what happened there, where he's saying scurvy, it's because it was a book. It was about explorer Amundsen, Norwegian explorer. I think it's called The Last Viking, that book, and appropriate for Willis. And Willis is reading this book, and it was Lance. I was sitting with Lance, and Marcel was setting up a shot, and we were just sitting next to each other there in the plane. And Lance was thinking about the word. You know, sometimes a word it seems weird, even though it's a word you've seen before. And he's saying out loud, he goes, scurvy. I go, and I started laughing. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, look, scurvy. It just looks weird on the page. I go, that's perfect. Let's do that. And that was a bit of dialogue that came that night. And then the book became more important in a way, although it's just where he is. It's nobody else is thinking about scurvy except Willis Peterson in that moment. And it's very important to him. So, and then of course he's interrupted by Gwen, who's playing her classical music, and that makes him think he wants to talk to her, and off he goes, you know.
And you mentioned that scene in the lavatory, and to me, I always find it interesting at the point in the film where someone pulls me in, reels me in, of that thing where I'm suddenly caught. And it happens so early in this film, in the lavatory, when Willis looks at himself, and that split second of not recognizing himself, I found so shocking. But then it was an incredible shorthand for me to understand what it's like for Willis. And that's actually something that I haven't seen that often previously in films dealing with dementia. As an audience member, I tend to be on the outside looking in, and it feels like that you've tried to place us in many ways in the eye of the storm. That
was the idea. I wanted to be, as much as possible, just based on my own experience, intimate experience with the evolution of dementia and different people in my family. I wanted to try to see things from Willis's point of view, feel them, you know, even if it wasn't explained entirely. But that piece of just the way Lance played that too, that moment that you're referring to, where he's shocked and he takes his glasses off, it kind of bothers him. It's like, who's this guy in here with me? I thought I was alone in the bathroom almost, it felt like, right? That, you know, that's combining what you prepare, what the shot is that Marcel's holding in that moment, and what the actor gives you, you know. So it was a nice wedding of all those things. And we tried, that happened a lot just because we worked together, you know, and doing things in a collective way. You can do things. I mean, it's not great to have not enough time, but you know, we made the most of it, I have to say. And it did help that the crew was really involved. I mean, Marcel put together in Canada a really, really good team. They were really strong. They were really quick. They understood exactly what he was trying to do. And they were into the story. We could feel that. As actors, we could feel that, you know, and it's always better when it's not just another job to the crew, when you sense that they're emotionally involved. You know, they tend to work harder, they're more attentive. And I was pleasantly surprised that the crew, you know, Marcel's team and everybody else started sharing stories, you know, their own family stories, little bits and pieces of just relating emotionally to what we were doing with this fictional story about this fictional family. It's great.
And at the center of this, it's not just the fact that you have a character who has dementia. You have a very, very problematic, troubled character, someone who's been troubled throughout their life. And it's a question for you, Viggo and Lance, about how you discussed playing Willis, because it's a character who has to win our understanding, if not necessarily our sympathy, all the time. And was it difficult to actually find that balance for both of you?
You want to take that, Lance?
Yeah, you know, there's something I never talked about, but I remember that we had sometimes some long speeches about, you know, my past, you know, how I caught my wife being, you know, being unfaithful, even emotionally unfaithful to me, you know, because she wanted to be an artist and I thought she could already draw. And, you know, I mean, my memory is going back and how I caught it. And one of the things is it started to even creep in on me where I felt that I couldn't remember anything. And I had to do these speeches. And I normally can remember anything. I mean, but it was like I was in a mode where I was lost. I got lost. There was a constant thread of getting lost in the moment. I mean, it can happen. But I never turned around and said, I don't know where I am. You know, I mean, when I hate that kind of idea. Like you know, I mean, playing that aspect, it would creep in, but almost because of the state I was in. I was so busy jumping from subject to subject that really were important to me. Like, did they know, you know, that, you know, or be talking about, you know, his past. And it was like, it was confusing because it was brilliantly written that way. It was like, there was an energy about Willis that you couldn't deny, because when he would get on a subject, he'd be like a pit bull holding on to your jacket. You know, he's not going to let you go. And then it would ease as if, I got some relief. I don't know how or where it came from, but I got it, and I'll stay with it. You know. I mean, it was a wonderfully challenging role.
I remember that in preparation. I mean, long before we went to shoot, one of the conversations at Lance's house, one time you asked me, so this idea, I mean, you've had experience, you've seen people like this. How do you think it should be played when he's obviously he's talking about something that is clearly not in the present, but for him it is. His present is that. And how should that change? How should I change in the way that I play that? And after talking about it, I think we came to the conclusion. I mean, I was saying, I think that you don't play it differently. You're not suddenly, oh, you know, it's real. So it's exactly the same as anything else that you're talking to me about.
Yeah.
Whether to me it's real or not, it's all real to you. And that's one of the that's why, you would often say, don't let me get caught acting. And I said, you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's my
It's
biggest
all
fear.
real to you. It doesn't matter how crazy it might sound to anyone else. It's totally real. You're seeing it, you're hearing it. You
Right.
know you're in the farmhouse. You're not in the house in Venice, California. You're in the farmhouse, and my mom is much younger, and my sister is a teenager, and they're out shopping. It's like, instead of my mom's dead for 35 years and my sister lives with her family in California, but that's real to you. And so you don't suddenly say it in some spacey way.
No.
So you played it for real. That's what you ended up, that was the decision going in, and that's how you did it, which was great. That's why there's so many layers to it.
Because that's the part of it that I always felt was terrifying. I didn't want to do that. I had to have something to hold on to, and it's in reality. I mean, I needed to know.
Made it real. You made it real for yourself somehow.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, were there ever points that you not that it's not that you can't go anywhere, no, it's you're going wherever the character takes you, but not just with you playing Willis Lance, but to give an example, Sverrir, who's fantastic as the younger Willis, the scene where we first see him and they bring the baby, the younger you home, and just says, I wish you'd never been born. It is really shocking. It is.
No, that actually happened.
Really?
Yeah. When my daughter was born, I finally got her in my hands for the first time. The nurses were wrapping her and unwrapping her and doing all kinds of stuff with her. And my wife was holding on her. She finally fell asleep, and the nurses had a tableau so I could take my baby girl and be alone with her for the first time. And I looked at her and I got this overwhelming joy and sadness at the same moment, where I looked at her, I said, I'm so sorry. I brought you into this world so you could die. But I'll always, and the part that's not in the movie was I said, I'll always be there for you no matter what. But
when Lance told me this, when you told me this was again another one of our conversations. You told me this, we were talking about our kids, and we were talking about when our kids were born. I was talking about Henry and you were talking about your daughters. And you talked about this child and you said, I was so moved. I felt so much love and protectiveness and tenderness and sadness at, mortality, all this. So I said, I'm sorry I brought you into the world so you could die. And I said, you said that to a baby?
Yeah.
You go, yeah. I mean, I just loved her so much. And I thought, yeah, sure. But if you don't get your story and you don't meet you and know what a loving person you are and how emotionally, how you conveyed that to me, right? You would think, wow, that's a hardcore thing to say, right? And I said, Lance, we got to use that in the movie. It's not going to be you. I wanted to start, it'd be early in the movie, so it'll be the younger version of you.
It's great.
Because I thought that's perfect. And that's a perfect marker to lay down. This is the kind of movie story it's going to be. And this is the kind of man with a different kind of existential view, I guess, of life and death than most people. Certainly most people like him and his walk of life and, from his generation. And I thought it was a perfect way to lay down a marker as to what the movie and what your character would be like. And then when Sverrir performed that, I remember asking you, I said, so what do you think? Does that seem right? And you seem pretty happy with the way he delivered that line, right?
Oh yeah. It was great. I think there's a lot of hidden overlapping emotions that happen in a moment like when a baby's born, and you've been through the 9 months and you know what the future's going to be. It's going to be a lot of work, and it's a lot of all those mixed emotions. It's so funny how mine fell on that one. The part I was thinking more of was, I know you're going to die someday, and I feel bad that I brought you into the world for that. Yeah. But also on the other hand, what I was also saying, I'll always be there for you. that was because I don't think that people would dare say that to themselves or say that at all. I'm sorry I brought you into this world so you could die.
No, you're an
and
unusual person.
You
You're an unusual person.
No, I live in a
You
clamshell.
get to live a little before.
Okay, what's great is that you two have the most extraordinary rapport between each other. So, and some people might know that you first acted together in Ed Harris's Appaloosa.
Yeah.
Clearly, there must have been something there for you, Viggo, to think, oh, actually, I think Willis is the sort of person that I think Lance could play really, really well. What point in time did Lance come into your mind when you were thinking about Willis?
Well, when we were shooting Appaloosa, I think we were shooting that in the autumn of 2007. The movie came out in 2008, and I had long known about Lance as an actor. I'd never met him until that point. I admired his work, and I'd seen some of his. I haven't seen them all. I don't think even Lance has seen all 280 odd movies, but he's done. But I'd seen a lot of them, all kinds of different movies, and it didn't matter how out there the genre was, or how unclassifiable the movie story might be, or how long he was on screen. He always made an impact. There was something inherently honest about his acting and committed 100%. So you're drawn to him no matter what's going on. And then meeting him in New Mexico on the set of Ed Harris's movie Appaloosa, I liked him. He was funny. He's a good storyteller. He did have a, kind of a sometimes absurdist sense of humor, which I kind of relate to. I like that. And we got along well, but I hadn't written Falling at that point. And so when I did write the script, I didn't think of anybody really. I was picturing the mother figure. That was really important to me because I feel she's the conscience of the piece, even though she's not there all the time. But I think that Gwen, played by Hannah Gross, is kind of the moral fulcrum in a way. It's what they argue about a lot. Their conflicting memories of her, feelings of her, the respect or lack of respect that they show for her. That's a bone of contention between Willis and John, and Willis and his daughter Sarah, played by Laura. And but when I had written it, I thought, God, Lance Henriksen is the right age. He's got that amazing voice, that presence. I haven't met him. I know he's, a decent, funny, kind person. This be a really interesting challenge. Maybe he'd like this. I don't know. I'm going to send it to him. Hopefully he'll like it. It's a big challenge for any actor to see what he thinks. And fortunately, he did like it. And being honest, as Lance is, he did say that it was terrifying. And did I think he could do it? He had just asked me point blank as we were halfway through the script, working on it one long day. He just said, "Do you think I can do this?" And I thought, what can I say? Obviously, I'm here, because I do think so. But he was just looking me right in the eye, and I said, I just turned the tables on him. I said, "Do you think you can do it?"
You did. And I said, "This is that moment. You better figure out what you're going to answer, buddy." That's something to me.
Well, we were both feeling the same. But then he laughed and it said, "Yeah, maybe." I said, "Well, I do think you could do it. Otherwise, but it's always unknown. Movie making is mysterious. Movie storytelling. You need to be lucky with the weather, with the casting, but you also create your own luck, and you need to be prepared for it. You put in the work, the preparation, finding the people, conversing, communicating in a good way, and then maybe things happen. We had dreams, Marcel and I, as to how it would look, the actors and me as to how it would feel, and that it would feel real and that would be moving. But you never know. Certain things have to come together. But if you've prepared well, then you can recognize a lucky moment when you see it, or hear a line and go, "Wait, that could be good." That sort of thing. And we did prepare really well. We used the time that was frustrating at the time, the years of not being able to find the money, really well with Marcel, with the crew, with Lance, with finding the crew early, finding the other actors. We took our time and did things really well until we started shooting, when, you know, the boat sails out of the harbor. Then you can only, you know, fix some of the rigging and you can make some small changes, but you're not going to go very far if you suddenly realize there's a big hole in the bottom of the boat. You know, you need to figure that out long before you get there. You know, set sail. So, and we did do that.
And Marcel, I've heard a number of stories about being very lucky and seizing the moment. One of my favorites is the experience of shooting Lance when he's in the ocean, which I gather was an impromptu shoot.
Well, we had kind of planned it, but whether we hadn't really decided on how we would approach it, really.
Permission was an issue as well.
Exactly. So whether we would just try to go for permission and get a no, or whether we should just do it and not ask for permission. So now we say it, and I guess it's out in the open. So we just did it.
We got permission.
Very small crew. Viggo was in the ocean with me as well, holding on to me while the waves were pounding in on us. So yeah, couldn't have been
the garbage bag under the
we were
camera.
in the boat together.
To protect it, we had a hefty bag, a big black garbage bag under the camera, sort of protecting it. I had a bunch of lit cigarettes in my mouth to hand them to Lance as the waves would wet his cigarette.
You know, there's another funny element in this, man, is that we were stealing the shot, really. I mean, we were stealing
Borrow.
And we would do one, and then it didn't quite work because the waves came in at an odd angle or something, and the sun was setting between the clouds, and the gap was closing like this, all on the horizon. And Viggo kept saying, we would shoot one, do about 3 waves, get splattered all over the place, and then he would say, "You got one more in you? You got one more in you? We got to get out of here, you know, but we got to look at that sky." And I remember I felt like I was stealing a car, you know. And we were running out of time. We're going to get busted.
Yeah,
but
we were
great.
soaking wet, but very happy by the time we were done. It was.
Yeah, we were all happy.
Chris, I guess
It's like you look to the side and there'd be several people standing filming the sunset as well. So like no one really bothered.
No, we were just
No one
tourists.
minded us there. We were just a couple of people there having fun.
But we
Tourists. We had a better camera than they did, but we were just tourists.
I guess, Chris, this as a producer, this is the kind of creativity that you like to encourage in the crew.
Absolutely. No, but I think what comes out from listening to Viggo is that he's always making the most of any situation that presents itself. And he knows exactly, as a director, he knows exactly what he wants, but he's always open to take something else. And I think that was true when you were shooting Viggo, and also true in the cutting room. You're always alive to a new possibility, a new way of doing something.
And the lucky part with because especially that scene was also that a program in California or in Los Angeles was quite packed. So had we not done it that way, we probably wouldn't have gotten it at all, to be honest.
No.
So
I mean, we had something that was frustrating. Remember, suddenly there was a problem with customs and immigration in the US, and our Canadian cast, all these kids and everybody except Laura really, couldn't come in, and we're staying at my house, well, my son's house. We're all sort of camping out in different places, basically, and we had the house ready for Venice. I remember, and we'd gotten all these plants in there and put in this garden, and suddenly, and it was quite hot, even though it was spring. It was warm during the day, and I remember going over and watering a couple of times a day. We got to keep this garden alive until we can shoot. But we didn't. We were like, what else are we going to do? We got to get these kids here. We have to rehearse that scene in the backyard. What are we going to do? And we thought, well, let's just go do we haven't got all the let's just do it. And it's true. If we hadn't had that delay, it's kind of like not having the money to shoot the movie for those years. Marcel and lots of people, we all sort of started thinking, imagining how it could be. And that's what we did that week. As you say, we thought, well, we got a couple days here. Let's go down and give it a shot,
We also
staying
had
in.
of
Sorry, Lance.
starting or not. You know, when the financing fell through at one point, and we had a year, or I don't know how long it was, but to nurture it, you know, to read it and overread it and try to imagine it all. You know, I mean, all of us. I mean, we had
And
the
you
same-
met Sverrir. Sverrir came to California. We went out.
Yeah, it was
That
great.
was
I mean,
great.
these little steps toward it,
Yeah.
pretty cool, rather than just throwing money at it and we all jump.
You know, and Marcel and I would interchange a lot of still photographs, and just we wanted to get a feel for what we wanted. It wasn't like we wanted to, and shared some films and so forth, but it wasn't like we were wanting to copy any particular style or director or movie. It was just, this works. Let's look at that. That works as a way of approaching a particular scene. Or we want a little boy, a 4-year-old's point of view. And so maybe it's like this, you know, at this angle and this kind of framing. And, you know,
By choosing the locations, by choosing where you are, this story grows on its own by, I mean, this camera wise and lighting wise. Oh, that sort of, it's such a moving process. I think that you know, you keep thinking about things, you talk about references, but in the end it just becomes its own own piece, really.
It tells you what it needs. The places tell you, and you know, the day and the actors and everything. And it but it felt to me like it was a continuation of writing the script, you know. Then it was then all of a sudden we were all rewriting just the approach, just little things, some big things, but mostly small things, as we kept adjusting to circumstances. And then obviously editing, as people have said before, you know, you write the script and you write it again as you shoot, and you write it again as you edit. And that's true. We did continuously, I think, look for any way that we can improve any little thing all the time, even on the fly sometimes, you know. And we had done enough preparation that we were relaxed, that Marcel might suddenly go, oh, that's really nice, look at that, you know, and let's do it from there. Or suddenly Lance said something, you know, then we're sitting on the plane, it's like, oh, it became useful and interesting, you know. But if you're stressed out because you haven't had time to prepare and get to know each other as a crew well, you're not as open and calm and able to seize on little things that seem like nothing, but all of a sudden they can develop into something important for a moment in the story.
And just staying with LA, it strikes me that thing of everything coming together, you can really see in the apex of a film, which is the lunch scene, which features Laura Linney. And I've got a question here from someone who sent in about casting Laura Linney. Could you talk about casting her, and how important did you feel that the role of a sister was to the whole of the narrative?
Hugely important, because ideally when that scene starts and you first see her, a few more pieces of the puzzle come together as to the family dynamic. You learn something more about John by seeing how she relates to him. You learn something more about Willis, the way she relates to him, and the way he relates to her, especially. And it needed someone who could, in short order, just, you would really believe this is the sister. You would really believe she'd gone through a struggle, like every time she sees her father, probably. It's like she had to prep for it for weeks, probably. It's like, okay, I'm gonna meet my dad. He'll probably destroy me like he does every time, but I'm gonna give it a shot again, you know, put my best foot forward. And I just, you know, thought of her, and I thought she would be amazing. I would believe that she was my sister, my younger sister, and just her ability as a stage actress, as a film actress, she's extraordinary. She does so much with just little things, and her emotional truthfulness, you know, always is there in her work. So I thought if she would do it, it'd be great. But when I sent it to her, I said, it's not a run of the picture role. It's, I mean, maybe it's not a large enough role for you, but it's a crucial role as far as I'm concerned in this story. And I just hoped that she would like it. And when she wrote back and said, I'm there, I love the script, I'm there, you had me immediately. So I started reading it. I said, great. And in fact, we were in Toronto when we finally got the go ahead, and just before starting shooting, and I was with Lance, and I said, let's Skype her, let's call her And so we we Skyped her. You remember that, Lance, in your hotel room?
Yeah.
And I said, hey, how are you? You want to meet our father? And she goes, sure. And I go, here he is. And then we talked for about an hour or so. It was really, really funny. She's got a good sense of humor.
Yeah, she's really good. That was great. Yeah.
You got along great with her, Lance.
Oh, I loved her. I just think she's, magic.
Yeah.
It was
It is
magic.
interesting because you can see her, for anyone who's been watching her recently in Ozark, or to go back and see her in Clint Eastwood's Mystic River or High Submersed, and she has the ability to cut someone to the quick with just a quick look. And what's interesting about this role, Sarah, is to see someone who's incredibly pent up and anxious
And vulnerable.
and vulnerable, and you can see her eyes are speaking volumes,
Yes.
even if she's not saying anything.
Yeah.
There's a very funny thing about her, and she said, I had to do a scene with her where I'm sort of hallucinating that she's an ex-lover of mine.
Her mother.
I mean, and
Yeah.
and I couldn't look her in the eyes to do the scene. I was talking to the table.
He was blushing.
I was red as a beet because I'm saying to her, remember the ducks and the sweating and the moon. I never sweat in the moon before, I mean, it was, and then we made love and the deafening noise of the ducks and shit. I couldn't do it to her. I couldn't say it.
Yeah.
And then
he was blushing.
Viggo took me into it, huh?
But I remember I said to you, Lance, we're almost done shooting this movie. You've said like 400 horrible swear words. You've said and done anything humanly possible to be just
You
revolting.
said I'm a tough broad. Don't worry about
And
it.
now you're looking at her and you're blushing. You're like an 8-year-old and you're looking at the table and scuffling your feet. And she's just sitting there ready for you to say this line and give her a reaction. And I said, well, let's try it again, Lance. But maybe I think it's better if you try it at least looking her in the eyes, because you really think it's Gwen,
Yeah.
and just made love, kind of that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
and it's your daughter, but you don't see your daughter at that moment. And you did a second take and you looked at her, but you flicked your eyes away again. You're sort of mumbling. And I said, well, we need to try one more time. If you can just keep just the whole line, just that one line, if you can at least look at her. And then you did it. And you had all your vulnerability because you were shy, and it was magical. I mean, and then you connected it and she just reeled from it in just a perfect way. It was really great, but it was very funny, I think, probably to Marcel as well, because we'd seen you say and do about anything. And all of a sudden you were like a little schoolboy, didn't dare look her in the eye.
She said, don't worry, I'm a tough broad.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, great. Thank you.
Stand and deliver, Lance. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got another question from this is from Rob regarding that scene again. First of all, say Viggo, a really fantastic film. Congratulations. This is for Marcel, in a way, and Viggo. I noticed the way that the camera moves and then it stops in that scene around the lunch table. Could you talk about the conversations that you two had based around that?
Well, I remember quite early on when I read the script, Viggo had a quite clear idea on that scene. He said, I want the camera to be moving around all the time for that particular scene. And I was like, oh, wow, God, that's going to be difficult because it's always, as it's not a continuous shot, it's going to be edited. It's always extremely difficult to shoot a scene like that. And obviously, Quentin Tarantino had done it really well with Reservoir Dogs and the opening scene of that film. And so that kind of, to me, was the best reference, as well as how do you move a camera when that, during a big dialogue scene like that. And so yeah, that and so we kind of went, okay, so the scene is long and it's really long, and it has to sort of contain some movements or changes in movement, I think, as well as like the mood changes in the scene as well. So I thought, well, then the camera maybe should follow that and react in a way to that. And that, to me, a camera that is part of the storytelling is is equally as much an actor as a way in the film. In telling a story, and that's why we mostly also just shot with one camera so that we could tell the shots and the stories. But for this scene, we actually used 2 cameras so that we could have a wider shot and a tighter shot, and then build the whole thing, the whole table on some decks that we could move the cameras around. But then, obviously, through discussion with Viggo, we decided upon certain points in the scene where it would stop and then move the other way around, and then go into more conventional shots over shoulders and stuff like that, and then start again.
I mean, the reason to do it wasn't just to do some kind of pain in the ass for the cinematographer and just like showing off. It was the specific reason was motivated. It's an example of having a creative idea that has to do with a particular character, in this case Willis, where with that many people in the room, he's already having problems at certain times of the day following conversations, or he's going in and out of what he actually is seeing and remembering. But then when there's a lot of people talking, they all have their agendas, they're all talking, it's just a family talking together. It's normal, but not for him. He's having a hard time following. So the movement, the reason I wanted to try it, and even though I knew it was a difficult thing to ask, especially in this short time we had, and all the dialogue and all the actors and all that, and that you had to have a consistent rate of speed so that you could cut and framing. It was very difficult. Plus, Marcel, I have to say, those 3 days that we were shooting in California, because of the rules of of shooting in the US, we couldn't bring our whole team from Canada. We had a new team. So it was like Marcel was dealing with that as well. So it was a lot to ask. But the reason was to reflect with movement how it's not confusing, but it's just, there's a lot of distractions for Lance's character, and he's trying to follow, and at a certain point he gets annoyed and he goes, okay, and he stops, and the camera stops, and then he's talking, and then people start talking again and telling some other stories, and it starts moving again. But the second time, I think it's fairly subtle what we managed in the editing, where it starts before you realize it, oh, it's moving again. And it's because he's starting to get wound up again, because people are talking, it's more than one conversation. He's not following, it's irritating him. And then he starts lashing out. And then as people start leaving the table, once more people leave the table one after another for various reasons, mostly because he's being very disruptive. And then it starts to become more conventional coverage, as Marcel said. Yeah, but there was a very specific reason that it was character driven to do that, and it worked. I mean, Marcel, it's one thing to have a creative idea, but then from Marcel's point of view, say, well, I got to execute that. How the hell am I going to do that? And he did it amazingly. So.
I know we're limited with time, but I've got a couple more questions that have been sent in. First of all, Chris, this one's for you. Could you talk about how you and the Canadian producer worked together, and what were the key UK and Canadian elements of the production?
So we shot the film in Canada and we posted in the UK. So the particular type of co-production it was actually driven by one of the financiers who needed there to be a UK co-producer involved. So it's a co-production is always more complicated for a producer. So you have to talk more, prepare more. I hadn't worked with Dan before. I'd met him in Cannes. We talked about another film. And so we knew a little bit about each other, but not really enough. So in a co-production, you're signed up to your partner for 12 months. And being open with the person, learning their strengths, learning how you can work as well as possible together. That was the challenge. But this was an unusual film because actually Viggo did all the difficult part of the producing, which is raising the money. He with Hamway did an incredible number of pre-sales at the AFM, and that provided the finance for the film. And then Viggo found an equity investor to come in as well. So although Dan and I had the easy part, which is the physical production of the film, putting it together is actually what Viggo did.
Yeah, but you guys spent so many thousands of hours trying to crunch those numbers and make everything work and satisfying both countries. I mean, I don't know how you guys did that, but it was a lot of work, obviously. And I got to know Chris really well because all of post-production, as he said, was done in Great Britain, and you know, all the editing, sound mixing, the score. You know, I mean, one of the benefits of having so much time before the movie is that I was also thinking about the music before we even started shooting, and even as we were shooting, as I was watching dailies, and as we were editing. By the time we got to the point where we had to go and record in London, we didn't have much money. We really didn't have any money left. And so the fact that I'd already been able to compose everything pretty much, we went in short order in 2 not long days, recorded everything, which was good and helpful because we didn't have the budget to go and spend weeks in a recording studio. So, but you organized all that, you know, so that it went smoothly. And I know it wasn't an easy task.
But Viggo, I think, I mean, all the best directors use the talents of everybody they're working with, whether it's the cast or the DOP.
Yeah.
You obviously have got incredible performances from all your cast.
Mm-hmm.
You inspired the crew. I know that for many of them, it was a most fulfilling shoot they'd ever had. And you did the same in place. You work very hard yourself, and you expect others to work hard, but you work incredibly collaboratively with them. And as your stories show, you're just making use of everything that people can give you.
Mm-hmm.
Listening, the story about that wonderful opening line of the film, or not the opening line of the film,
Right.
but you know, you're always, and you've obviously had a wonderful relationship with Marcel, and you had the same with the editing crew and sound crew, and you were, I mean, actually it was pretty difficult getting the UK and Canada to match on this particular film, and you were throwing some shit, is the only way to say it, and you managed to find a way to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was, you know, you would have liked to have been able to do things different ways, been able to use different people at different times, and that wasn't always possible. But you just listened, understood, and moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Lance, I have a question here from someone for you. Were you ever given a chance to sit in on rushes? Did you not look at the rushes? And what was it like seeing your performance on screen in the finished movie the first time?
I was amazed at what it was. You know, I really was when I saw it the first time. I mean, I couldn't wait to see it, but I never go to dailies, or I don't watch replays on the monitors or anything like that.
The only thing you might have seen was the beach thing, because we went home and we had a drink and we all dried off, and then we sort of looked at some of that.
Yeah, I wanted to see the sunset and see what it looked like. You know.
But it's true, you didn't see
that. Was it, though. I never watched anything else. I mean, I felt like
too tough to watch all that again, going through all those hard
scenes. My God. It's hard enough to do it, right?
What?
No, it was hard enough to play that role.
Yeah, I don't want to watch it. No.
Yeah, all the little pieces.
I mean, I had a rough time talking to you at times like that. You know, I remember you saying to me once, we got off the set and we went out in the parking lot, as we usually did, and had a cigarette. And I said, you said to me first, you know, I don't usually take a lot of crap from anybody, you know, in my life. I don't, you know. And I went, oops, is this telling me?
Why did I say that?
What?
Why did I say that?
I think I had a day where I was really putting it to you, you know, I mean, and I think it was like getting rubbed with steel wool, you know, I mean, and finally you had enough and you're telling me, you know.
I remember another time where we both said this was going to be the last movie we ever did. We had a
Yeah, I don't want to do another movie after this. No, I'm done.
Yeah, it was a nice thing to try directing, but I'm not going to do that again. But that
Yeah.
lasted about a day. We were really depressed, as happens, and commiserating. It's like, well, let's just get this thing done somehow, some way. I even had that kind of conversation with Marcel at one point. And you're like,
I felt like Rocky Balboa had beat the shit out of me. You know,
it was not easy. It was not going
no, it wasn't
as smoothly as we hoped, but we were like, well, we have to finish it. We have to be professional and finish. And
I have to tell
we can, but we didn't have high hopes that particular day. I remember talking to Marcel having a day like that, but you and
we were all hurting, you know, but I got to tell this story. It was such a miserable day. By the end of the day, all I want to do is get back to my hotel and stand out in front of the hotel and smoke a pack of cigarettes. That's all I ever wanted to do again, you know. And we both admitted, you know, I don't know if I want to ever do this again, movie. Why do I want to? And you said it. And then the next morning I get into the trailer and there's a note. And the note said, hey, buddy, look, acting is supposed to be fun. This is all supposed to be fun. Let's have some fun tomorrow. And he left a rose on it. And it all evaporated. I would never get down again on the set. No, it was great. It really was. And we did have a great day the next day.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And now, over a year down the line.
Sorry, man. You don't get a rose from another guy, you know. It's like, wait a minute. What's going on here?
And now we're way over a year down the line since completion of a film, and it's done the rounds in these very strange times. You mentioned at the beginning, Viggo, that there have been other recent films dealing with dementia, each of them coming from a different angle. But the one thing that really struck me watching this film again today is these are now, it seems like more and more people have dementia. These are really important things to communicate to people. These films of what it's like, the experience of what it's like, not just being the person on the outside watching it with someone else, but trying to understand that person in order to relate to them better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all has to do with communication. And I think, I mean, in the beginning, with my grandfather and to some degree my stepdad, but you learn certain things. One of them, very important, is don't correct people that are already a certain way down the road with dementia or Alzheimer's. You have to question, why are you doing that? For example, someone says to you, I had lunch with my pal Jimmy today and we had a great time. And instead of saying, Jimmy died 38 years ago, Dad, which only causes them to relive that death, and it's horrible and confusing, just say, you know, what did you guys have for lunch? Sacrifice your ego, your need to have your father be who he was, and for him to be in sync with what is real to you. And who knows, memory is subjective. So why is his present any less valid than yours, you know? But think about what suits them. Give up your idea that they're going to be what they used to be. That's a hard thing to do, especially if it's a family member or a loved one. And yeah, those are things that are important to deal with. But communication in general, I mean, I think that's the other pandemic. And it's not just in the United States, it's global. And that's the pandemic of poor communication or no communication. And I don't mean just politicians, I mean in society at large. That is a very serious pandemic right now. Polarization, they're not even talking to each other in many cases based on ethnicity, race, religion, nationality, language, who knows, sex, sexual orientation. I mean, it's gotten as bad as the COVID pandemic, that pandemic. And unfortunately, I think it's going to last longer and it's not going to be cured by a vaccine. It can only be cured by making a sincere effort to see the other person and accept them as they are, and at least listen to them for a moment and communicate and not just give up on them, you know. In part, that's what our story is about. But I think as this somewhat frustrating year that started great, we're invited to the Cannes Film Festival, then that's canceled, and, you know, ups and downs to thinking nobody's ever going to see our movie, certainly not in a cinema. And then they have here and there, and it's working. People are seeing it and people are reacting. But as the years worn on, and not just in Trump's, you know, US, but all around the world, we see it in Great Britain, certainly. There's this polarization, this sort of disconnect between politicians and regular citizens, but amongst citizens themselves. It's not great right now. And it's going to take a real effort. You know, we have to roll up our sleeves as much with that pandemic as with the other one, but it's going to take different tools, mostly trying to at least exercise a degree of empathy, you know, I think. And so these things seem to make the movie, feels to me, each time I see it with an audience or part of it, it feels kind of more timely. It feels different than I liked it when we finished it at the end of a year ago now, basically, is when we finished everything. And we showed it the first time all done. And I liked it. I was happy with the way it turned out. I loved all the actors, from the 4-year-old to Lance. Everybody fit their roles. I loved the work that Marcel did. It just all felt like our collective effort came together in a way. I was happy with the way it turned out. I had no regrets, really, which is unusual. But now it's a different movie. I mean, it's a different movie every time you show it, obviously. Depends what audience sees it. But with what's happening in the world and the problems of communication, I think that some aspects of the story, particularly that effort, stubborn effort, maybe as stubborn in trying to communicate one character can be as, or Sarah, John can be, as Willis is stubborn about not wanting to communicate. That's a worthwhile stubbornness effort. There's no guarantee it'll bear fruit, but some point of contact might be made. There might be a flashing, just a glimmer of connection, you know. But if you cut off that person, you don't talk to them because you don't like their politics or you don't like something about them, then obviously you're not going to get anywhere. Which is that's a clear parallel, I think, to what's happening in the world. I mean, for me, that's communication.
Even within your family as well, sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have reached our limit with the time. Thank you all for joining us today, Lance and Marcel and Viggo and Chris. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Lance, I'm determined now. I think I'm going to make 2021 my Lance Henriksen retrospective year. I think it's going to take me longer than a year to actually get through all of your films, but I've decided now my mission, my New Year's resolution is going to be to watch every single film in which Lance Henriksen appears.
Remember this, there's some of the films, alimony films, you know, you have to do them. And other jet-lag movies where you didn't know what you were getting into.
Yeah.
You get off the plane, they take you right to the set. You know, that's not my fault.
Well, I look forward to watching them all anyway, and I hope you all have a very lovely Christmas.
Thank you very much for that.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It was a great conversation.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.